Hi, it's me. You can call me BP. Welcome back to my channel. I don't have an emotional support Oliver today because I scared him away with all of my very excited thoughts about the leaked behind the scenes pictures in my last video. I scared him away, so he's not here. Apologies for that. You just get me. And maybe this Oliver. Someday. Someday, I tell you.
BP's back!
What an episode. Eddie Diaz, welcome back to my television screen. I missed you, Pookie. This episode was very Maddie and Eddie centric, which was incredible. I love to see it. So Maddie starts off the episode and we see her and she's back to work in the call center and everything's going great until she realizes that the caller on the line is herself and she starts to have a panic attack. She can't breathe, her neck starts bleeding again, and then she ends up waking up in a night terror. The next morning, she confesses to Chimney that she's been having all of these night terrors, and she thinks the best way to get rid of them is to go back to work. We got a timeline confirmation that Maddie got attacked 5 weeks prior to Disconnected. Chimney encourages Maddie to go back to work, just basically being like, okay, even though you say you're having night terrors about work, I don't know if you should go back to work, but I trust your own judgment for your own life. Good luck with that. I support you. Go for it. We then see Eddie in El Paso and he shows up to one of the fire stations there and he walks in and he sees kind of like all of the wildlife in the office, which consists of like a stuffed rattlesnake, a cow's head. He seemed kind of weirded out about it and I was like, dude, come on, you lived in Texas for how long and you're freaked out by a little rattlesnake? My boss had a little rattlesnake rattler and would just bring it around the office every time. It's a common Texas thing. You haven't lived in California for that long. Anyway, so the captain from the El Paso Fire Department comes in and basically is like, hey, your last captain gave you a glowing review and he said you always have a job there in LA. And Eddie and the captain talk a little bit more and we find out that Eddie's fixer-upper is in fact a huge fixer-upper. It's shit. Poor Edmundo. We get another timeline with Eddie and we find out that Eddie's been in El Paso for 3 weeks. So in Voices, there's a 2-week gap between the ending of Maddie's storyline and Buck and Eddie saying goodbye. The captain then tells Eddie that he's kind of worried about going out on a limb for Eddie. The captain then kind of tells Eddie that he's worried that Eddie's going to leave El Paso to go back to LA because he's been burned in the past because he brought in this lieutenant who, he put a lot of time, effort, and money into him, only for his wife to get a job in St. Louis and leave them high and dry. Which, listen, I'm sorry St. Louis gave you trauma, but not everyone is like that. Let's move on. Let's give everyone their fair shot. But Captain Martinez lets Eddie know that he will be in touch, but it doesn't sound great. We then see Maddie go actually back to work in real life, not in dreamland, and everyone's super excited for her to be there. And she takes her first call, and it's a little boy who is trapped in an apartment fire. And as she's talking to the little boy, she's trying to give him some tips to try to get him to flag down the firefighters that are there. And as this is happening, her voice is getting hoarser and raspier and it's becoming more and more difficult for her to speak until she quite literally has a panic attack and is not able to speak, at which time Josh then comes over and takes over the call. The little boy is saved. All is right in the world, but Maddie cannot talk. We then see Eddie at his parents' house having lunch with his mom and Chris. And it's so funny that his mom gets weirdly squeamish about the stuffed rattlesnake in the office as if she hasn't lived in El Paso, Texas for also 30 some odd years. Helena, come on. Then we see another fucking advertisement for Amazon Prime. I'm sick of it. Sick of it. Sellouts. I'm just kidding. Or am I? In this package is a bright new shiny PS5 for Christopher, and his parents are kind of like, oh, okay. And his mom makes a couple backhanded comments to Eddie about how he doesn't have a lot of money, and he's like, it'll be fine. He then talks to Christopher about where the two of them should set it up, if they want to set it up at Eddie's parents' place or at Eddie's place, and Eddie's mom goes on a little rant about oh well, our place is better and yada yada yada, and Eddie's like, okay, whatever. Then Eddie gets up and goes to do the dishes, and him and Ramon have a little heart-to-heart, and Ramon basically tells him, like, you don't have to buy his love. Christopher already, like, thinks the world of you. Ramon actually heard Christopher bragging to his friend that his dad was this big, cool firefighter, and he also tells Eddie that Chris will eventually come around because you did. I don't know, I had thoughts about that, but, you know, Eddie was also like fucking 30 years old when that happened, so let's maybe not wait that long. We check back in with Maddie, who is with Chimney at a doctor, and he is showing off, being like, look at these vocal cords, but he's showing Chimney and Maddie her like CT and basically saying like, hey, there is nothing like structurally wrong with your voice box, with your throat, everything's healing perfectly fine. There seems to be no physical medical reason for this. What I think it is I think it's a trauma response. And Maddie's like, great, love that. And she manages to squeak out this little, she took my voice, which is heartbreaking and so sad. The doctor tells them that there is some like speech therapy exercises that they could work on, and Maddie could also see a speech therapist, but that's just treating the symptoms and not the root cause, and the root cause being the trauma that Amber Brayburn inflicted onto her. We go back to Eddie, and he is working on his house, and his phone rings, and he has I don't even know if that's a possible ringtone for an iPhone, but it's like a very old timey like landline-esque ring, whatever. And it's the captain of the El Paso fire station, and basically tells Eddie that there's a hiring freeze and they're not going to be moving forward, and Eddie's not going to be a firefighter. He gets off the phone with the captain, and he's just like really sad and really upset about it.
Who you gonna call?
Evan Buckley. He calls Buck, and they are on a little FaceTime call, and Buck is in the 118, and he's cooking dinner in his little apron, and they're basically having this back and forth about Eddie, his job, his future, whatever. And during this FaceTime call, we kind of get some more details. Did Eddie buy this house? Crazy. It's crazy if he actually bought this house instead of like renting it, which I think he actually did buy it. But then he's talking with Buck, and he's like, do you think Bobby was like serious about that I'll always have a job in LA? And Buck is like, what, are you thinking about coming back? And Eddie says to him like, oh, well, don't worry, I'm not going to kick you out of your house, but I might have to use your couch. Use Buck's couch, you say? Use Buck's couch. While Eddie's on the phone complaining with Buck, he basically says to him like, oh, I like don't want to be an Uber driver. Foreshadowing, question mark. Buck is like, you're right, but you also didn't go to El Paso to be a firefighter. You went to be a dad, so just focus on being a dad. The alarm goes off, and Buck is like, okay, I gotta go. Bye, 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 bye. And Eddie's like, okay, bye. Poor Eddie Diaz. They wanted Buck to make more friends. You know who actually does need to make friends? Eddie Diaz. Eddie Diaz needs to make more fucking friends. We then transition to one of the calls inspired by real life, where someone is in Zoom court for a suspended license, but as he's in Zoom court for the suspended license, he is driving. And as he's driving, he actually like has like a solo accident and like drives off of a parking garage and is like hanging in midair, and the 118 rushes to the rescue. And as they do that, the guy in the car, his name is Ozzy, he's like, oh, I deserve this. I've weaseled out of everything in my life. The weasel deserves to go down with the ship, which is how I feel about Evan Buckley and Eddie Diaz's relationship. The weasel deserves to go down with the ship, but they are able to save Ozzy. However, they are not able to save the car, and the car then falls on Athena Grant's car and explodes. I actually don't know if it's Athena's car, but Athena is there, so I assumed it was her car. I don't think it is. Doesn't matter. We check back in with Maddie and Chimney, and they are together doing some speech therapy exercises for Maddie, and she's able to do a couple, but not a lot and not very well, and Maddie just gets super overwhelmed and super frustrated with this. She types out on her little iPad, how do I kill a monster that's already dead, which is very heartbreaking because it's true. Like, Amber is dead. You can't really like you can't go to court and get vindication. Like, the bitch is dead. Athena shot her point blank period straight to the dome, straight through the dome. Like, she's gone, but her trauma is still, you know what I mean. Then we see Eddie Diaz in a Texas used car lot, and he is talking. At first, I thought Eddie was about to be a used car salesman, which I think would have maybe been a little better of an idea than what he ended up doing, but that's fine. That's just my opinion. You don't have to hold any weight to my opinion, Pookie. But anyway, he trades in his 2019 GMC Denali for a Toyota Prius. A used Toyota Prius. And he said it'll be good and blah 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 blah. But one note, I do really appreciate this detail that they did when they showed the cars, because if you look at the corner of the Prius's windshield, I think it's a Prius, I don't know, it's a Toyota. I said it was a Camry, maybe it's a Prius, who knows. But if you look at the corner of the windshield, it has the Texas inspection sticker, which the Denali does not, because that is a thing they do in Texas, is you have to have your little inspection sticker on the front corner of your windshield. Never forget, in the year of our Lord 2021, when I was driving a car that had not been inspected since 2012. Scary. That was a scary time to be alive. But he gets his Prius, he gets everything ready, and we have entered a new era in Eddie Diaz's life. Eddie Diaz, the Uber driver. Yup. And he's not very good at it. He is not very good at it. Remember how I said that Eddie Diaz needs to make friends? Yeah, he does. Because he just ran his fucking mouth talking to all of these passengers in his Toyota, and people were like, shut up, dude. Stop talking. Eddie is just lonely, okay? He lost his codependent friend. He has no one to talk to because his parents suck. So I get it, but like, damn. He eventually meets some woman who was an Uber driver. She gives him a lot of tips and tricks. The main thing that she tells him is to shut up. Like, you're talking way too much. So after the whole Uber montage ends, we see Eddie going to pick up a ride, and it's like a little teenager who gets in, and he's like, oh, okay, like, just give me a second, like, my friend's getting in. And Eddie's like, no worries. And then he's like, all right, you ready? And he like looks, and guess who's sitting in the back seat? His own flesh and blood and DNA, Christopher Diaz, is in his car as the Uber driver, Uber passenger, whatever. Crazy. After Eddie drops Christopher off, he kind of just like sits in his car and lurks for a minute.
Who you gonna call?
And he FaceTimes Evan Buckley once again. Something bad happens in his life, any minor inconvenience, he's got to call up the emotional support bisexual. And as they are talking, I thought it was crazy. Buck pulls out a beer from the fridge, which, like, dude, it's probably 3:00 on a weekday that this was happening, because are they in the same time zone? No, they can't be. El Paso's in Mountain Time. Oh, geez, that's weird. It would still be like 3:00 Buck's time that he pulls out a beer and drinks it. And everyone, myself, I was like, we need to give you more props. We need to give you like a kombucha. When Eddie's on the phone with Buck, his whole gripe is basically like, I can't believe I got caught in a lie again. I lied to him again. I'm the worst, blah, 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 blah. And Buck basically is like, well, you have to talk to him. Why don't you text him? Whatever. And like, it can't be your biggest fear, because your biggest fear already came true, that Christopher left, but now you are there to be able to pick up the pieces. And Eddie's like, yeah, you're right. Of course he's right. Of course he's right. He knows you better than you know yourself. Dingbat. Athena then makes a little trip to the Hahn household to see Maddie and just kind of talk with her about like what's going on, because it seems to be that Chimney reached out to her for some help, and her and Maddie kind of have a heart-to-heart about like the fear and the scariness that kind of comes with their call with Amber. And Athena basically tells Maddie that like Amber didn't take your voice, but fear did. Like, that's what's holding you back is the fear. And Athena kind of goes on this whole like spiel about her own fear, and basically just saying like, oh, you don't think that like I'm scared every time I walk up on a car, knowing how many people have pulled a gun on me. Like, it's scary in life, but you know, you got to push the forward. And then Maddie writes on her little iPad like, yeah, but I'm not you. And Athena's like, girl, nobody is. Athena just basically gives her a pep talk of like, you know, I know it's really hard, but you can do it. I believe in you. Text me anytime. And Maddie's like, Okay. Maddie then goes to the park with G, and we see Maddie and Athena having a little text moment, and as Maddie looks up from her phone, she can't find Gian. Gian just kind of like disappeared. In like 2 seconds, Maddie took her eyes off her. So Maddie's like frantically going around the park trying to get G's attention with the very little voice that she has. She has this much voice, she can't do it. And as someone who suffers from chronic laryngitis every single year for the past 9 years, I know how hard it is to try to get someone's attention when you literally have no voice. Terrifying. Awful. I'm sorry for the person I become when I have chronic laryngitis, because I just end up snapping at people or like clapping at them, because that's the best way I can make loud noise. Anyway, tangent over. Maddie is, trying to go around the park, and she's trying to yell for G, and she eventually is able to like break through her voice spell and is actually able to talk and actually able to yell for G. And G's like, I'm right here, Mom. And Maddie's like, oh, thank God. And then Gian's like, you got your voice back, Mama. No, I need a moment. We check back in with Texas and Eddie is doing some more home improvement, and he takes out his phone. Hi. He's back. Sorry, someone needed some emotional support from me, so here we are. But we see Eddie, and he's in his house doing some repairs, and where are you going? Can you not? He's doing some repairs in his house, and he pulls out his phone to text Christopher, and he has all of these unanswered texts that he sent Christopher. Like, they're all read, but Christopher hasn't responded, and Eddie sends one last text, kind of just as like a last-ditch effort, and that one gets read, and Eddie's just kind of like lets out a frustrated sigh, and then there's a knock on the door. And guess who's at the door, Oliver? It's Christopher! And Eddie asks Chris how he gets there, and he says, Uber. Yeah, Eddie, Christopher's been taking Ubers since he was like 9. However old he was in season 4. And Christopher ends up bringing the PS5 to Eddie's house, and Eddie's like, oh, great, do you want to set it up here? And Christopher's like, no, I want you to return it. And Eddie gets really sad. He's like, oh, you don't want it. And Christopher's like, no, I do want it, but I want you to save your money, because you need to save your money if you're going to stick around. The Diaz boys who are going to be okay. And then they have a very sweet hug, and all is right in the world, and the world is here healing, and we love to see it. Speaking of people who are going to be okay, we end the episode with Maddie, who goes back to the call center and is all's right in the world, and she's all fine. Where are you going? He does this a lot, where he like half stands. He like stands over me, except for he does this when I'm sleeping, and it's really just obnoxious. Normally when he sits like this and I have to use my hands, normally I'm wearing this sweatshirt, I like put it over him and hold him, because one of these days I will buy him, do not eat my hair, I will buy him a baby sling, and I will just be able to baby wear him, because he deserves to be baby worn like this. I do want to draw your attention to this really cute little piece of art that Eddie has on his mantle, that's the picture from, I want to say, Hen and Karen's vow renewal, and it says 118, and it's like all of them all together, and it's all signed, and I can just imagine Buck going around to everyone having them sign it for Eddie, which is incredible, and I love to see it. I hope you enjoyed my recap of 8/12. What were your thoughts? What were your favorite moments? Where do you think we're going from here? Are you eating my hair again? That's all from me. Is that all from you? Do you have anything else to add? No? Okay. We hope you enjoyed this video. We hope you're having a good week. Oliver, do you have any words to say for the people? He says, be kind. Be sure to open your windows for the kitties so they can experience some fun spring air. Isn't that right? All right, that is all from our end, and we will see you in the next one. Say bye, Mr. Kitties.